Okay, good morning, everyone. Okay, we'll continue our book reading this morning, The Toyota Way to Service Excellence by Jeffrey K. Leica and Karen Ross. Okay, yesterday we looked at using PDCA, that's the plan, do, create, and act to improve process to achieve desired outcome. And that was in chapter 5, which said macro process principle. Today, we begin a new chapter, chapter 6, which says micro process principles. Micro process principles, which says make work pattern visible for continuous improvement. Make work pattern visible for continuous improvement. So, we're looking at micro process principles and what micro process principle is. It says macro processes set the framework for micro processes. Remember, we just finished looking at macro processes. So macro processes sets the framework for micro processes. Think of organizations as complex puzzles with thousands of pieces. We generally start the puzzles with the outer edge that frames the puzzle. Then we select big and distinctive objects like faces of people and build those. Finally, we get to the hard work of all the detailed pieces that are different to distinguish at first glance, like the sky. Microprocesses are like the detailed pieces in the center of the puzzle. The macro framing is easier, but the tedious detail is what brings the puzzle to life, and this requires the hardest work and discipline. In Lean, the macro level frame is the overall flow of material, people, and information through value streams and what we will draw as a value stream map. Usually, macro processes are the result of decisions about architecture and structure. How will we organize our supply chain? How do we lay out equipment and offices? How do we schedule the overall flow of work in the organization? For the macro level, we zoom in a process box. Macro processes establish the framework for daily work. The daily work follows a rhythm of activities, and this is where service excellence happens or doesn't. What should be found at the daily level are highly developed people who are passionate about serving customers, continuously improving how they do the work based on what they learn every day. To get to this, we must thoroughly integrate process, people, and problem solving. The image we have of how the process should function, which is standard, provides the framework for excellence and highlights the next obstacle to overcome to get closer to an ideal process. In this chapter, we'll talk about standardization, visualizing deviations from the standard, building in quality at each step, and using technology to enable people to perform and improve their work. The idea of voluminous standard and procedure might bring to mind a highly regimented bureaucratic process. The opposite of an empowered workforce creatively solves problems. Yet, we will argue that bureaucracy has been misunderstood and misapplied. And if used properly, standard processes are the foundation for continuous improvement. This is difficult to accept precisely because standards are often used improperly. Okay, so this is where we'll stop for today on our reading, like the new chapter, and a new chapter, chapter 6, we said micro process principle. We looked at macro process principle and we're done with that. So macro process is a frame detailed microprocess. Like this is where you see the details of all the work that is done in an organization. He used puzzle as an example. This is an example of what a puzzle looks like. If you've played puzzle before, you know that there are bits and pieces of what you have to put together to get the complete picture. So that is actually what macro process is. It is a framework or the details of micro process, the things you do in general to complete an organization. When you talk about standardization, talk about visualization and organization and all those things. So this is just where we stop for our reading today. Thank you.